Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me for this edition of MeteoMark's Weather Winter 2025-2026 Outlook. We're going to take a look at a weak La Nina and then second half of the winter La Nada. We're looking at analog years such as 2010 through the 11, 2013 through 14, 2016, 17, and 2017 and 18. You could consider last year maybe an analog year, but we didn't have La Nada. First half of the winter La Nina and then the second half La Nada. Could this mean more snow and cold this winter than the past couple winters? Let's get into it. So here we are with the ENSO index. This is not the be-all end-all, but it is one of the first parameters we start to look at with a winter forecast. Gives us an idea of where we're headed and where we are right now. So let's take a look at November here. We're right around that negative 0.5 degrees Celsius in the Eastern Pacific. Ultimately, what that means is we're at a very weak La Nina right now. We are slowly heading towards a La Nada, but that's not going to come until closer to later January into February here, where we start to cross the 0 degree Celsius isotherm here. So you can see we're going to be in a weak La Nina for quite a while here, and then the second half of the winter looks like a La Nada. All right, so building upon the weak La Nina and La Nada. Yeah, this is what we're seeing for this type of a winter. The subtropical branch blasting into the Pacific Northwest, the polar vortex, or the polar express as they call it, blasting up into Western Canada here. Ultimately, what this means is the West Coast, warm and dry for the most part, wetter than average here into the Pacific Northwest. That jet stream is going to blast southward across the plains here. That's going to spill that cold air, that polar vortex really setting up across central and eastern North America this year. We're going to go over those snowfall maps momentarily, and you can see here that jet stream pattern dives across the south. You have a much more active subtropical jet here into the east. That combines forces with this Arctic jet to the north, and I think we're going to see some pretty decent nor'easter action here along the East Coast, something you haven't seen in quite a few years here. Also, the Great Lakes are running well above average with temperatures. That means they're not going to freeze over as fast this year, which means raging lake effect snow events that could really break some records here. Lots of cold air to work with. This definitely looks like a winter that we could be seeing much more action. And going over the most anticipated map of this video, the snowfall outlook. So this is what I'm expecting with this type of pattern, these parameters. Yeah, the West Coast, this is not good for you. The Sierra Nevadas, the Cascades, you need the snow, especially to build up so you can fill up those reservoirs for summertime next year. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. We're going to see deficits 20 to 30%. Now, back east here, this is where things get interesting. With this troughiness, the polar vortex setting up right up here into this part of Canada for a long part of the winter. We're going to see 10% above your average snowfall here across parts of the deep south. I think parts of the Gulf Coast here could also see a dusting at times. Also, if we look up here into parts of the east, I know the big cities of the northeast and interior parts of the area have not seen a lot of snow the last couple winters, and that is looking to change. I'm thinking a 10 to 20% at least here increase from your averages. So we're looking more closer to an average winter, and we're going to up that by about 10 or 20% here. Now look at here the Great Lakes into the Northern Plains, Midwest, into Eastern Canada. That is where we're going to see in Central Canada as well. That is where we're going to see 30% above your average snowfall. That is massive. So you're looking at the Great Lakes region, parts of the upper Ohio Valley, especially into the St. Lawrence Valley, parts of southern Ontario, spilling over into parts of western Quebec as well. So this looks really, really interesting. This is, if you're into snow, this is your kind of map. This is what you really want to see. It is going to be really interesting to see how far this cold air can blast to the south. And here along the East Coast, your snowfall here is all dependent on how many coastal storms we can get going out at least this far in this region. If they hug the coast, you get more mix and rain events. And we're also going to see this winter have a lot colder here across the east. As you expected out west here, this is really bad news, 2 to 3 degrees above your average. Also South Texas and South Florida, a degree or two above average. However, Here into eastern Maine as well, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Canadian Maritimes. You can expect that with a southerly flow. Then we get to where the polar vortex is going to set up shop. This is where we're going to see 1, 2, as much as 3 degrees below average. And you're probably thinking, well, that doesn't seem like a lot. Well, it is. If you spread it out over 3, 4, 5 months, you're weighing the averages down quite a bit. That ultimately means you're seeing some massive cold air outbreaks here. You know, a degree below average, that's getting you closer to your average winter or even outdoing the last couple winters. And also up here into parts of the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Northeast, the Plains, that's as much as 2 degrees below average. Then we get to the most important section up here into the Midwest, parts of the Western Great Lakes, South Central, and parts of Eastern Canada. This is where we're looking at 3 degrees below average. Ultimately, what this means is tremendous sustained cold air outbreaks. You're going to be able to keep that snowpack going. Many parts of the winter, you'll be buried in snow. Now, that will also help spill these cold air outbreaks. As you get more snowpack, that's going to help these Arctic blasts actually push south and east beyond where the snowpack is. So that's what I'm expecting here, especially with the Great Lakes being open for business. They're running well above average for temperatures. That ultimately means lake effect snowstorms as well. And that helps translate here to the East Coast. I do want to make mention, just off the East Coast, we actually have some very cold water, which could actually help magnetize the cold air eastward here, because cold air is attracted to cold water. Now, precipitation, this is total liquid equivalent precipitation. So this includes all snow, ice, sleet, freezing rain, that sort of thing, and regular rain as well. So obviously it's going to be a little bit different than the snowfall, although the bullseyes are in similar locations here. So ultimately, we're going to start off here with the East Coast. Obviously, I think we're going to see a lot more nor'easters, coastal storms that should push up the totals 20 to 30% above average. Also, with these clipper type systems, we're also going to have a few Colorado lows that push up through here too. We're just going to be getting hit from all sides here across the Great Lakes. Of course, the Great Lakes running well above average for temperature, so that's going to increase the lake effect snow as well. So we're going to have some tremendous storm tracks here across the Deep South as well. That's going to push, some overrunning scenarios as well. So yeah, it's going to be a lot stormier than the last couple winters. We can say that. Definitely much closer to average, but many areas will blast right through that. It's almost starting to think or look like 2013, 2014 all over again, rather than some of these tepid years where we've seen almost nothing, like last year, 2022, 2023, those type of years. We're just not seeing that, and the polar vortex is going to be in play with this area as well. Now, look out in the West Coast. Yeah, this is where the ridge is going to be prevalent. Not to say you won't get some storms. You will get some heavy rain at times, but look at this. This is not good for the drought situation. Almost 30% below average in much of California, Nevada area. Pacific Northwest, a little bit above average here, plus 10%, because I do think you'll get some storm action here with both jet streams. But yeah, it's going to be the East that really sees a lion's share, 40% above average here into parts of the South Central Great Lakes. Look at South Texas here into northern Mexico, parts of South Florida, around 10% below average precipitation. So yeah, storminess is going to be mostly here in the East, from the Midwest, Appalachians, parts of the South, and especially the Mid-Atlantic Northeast coastline here as well. Great Lakes just looking really stormy across eastern, southeastern Canada here as well. Now, looking at our sea surface temperature analysis, you can see the Eastern Pacific, yeah, it's cooler than average. Not by tremendous standards here, but you can see that weak La Nina really holding on. That's, of course, going to wash out as we head throughout the winter season towards La Nada. Now, I wanted to draw your attention to something very interesting that could really play into this winter. Look at this big area of water that's sitting extremely below average here. We're talking about 5 degrees below average off the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast coast. This could have big implications. It could really help to act as a magnet to all this colder air that's blasting down from eastern and central North America here, and help meet up with some coastal lows. And yeah, we could have, a few good decent snowstorms, at least in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, and that is something we did not have this year. Last year, I should say. This year we have much colder temperatures for water sitting off the coast, whereas last year we had much warmer temperatures. So this is looking like we could be seeing quite a bit in the difference. Look at that. That actually goes down the coast right around Florida and the Carolinas as well. And I wanted to show you the sea surface temperatures, well, the lake surface temperatures, I should say, of the Great Lakes. Now, yeah, they've cooled down, obviously, since, summertime and fall. But I wanted to make note, look at Lake Erie here. You have some areas here. We have the Fahrenheit side that are pushing almost 60 degrees, 60, right in the center here. So we're running well above average, even into the other Great Lakes here, like Michigan, Lake Superior, Lake Ontario here. All these lakes are running very, very warm. What that ultimately means is that cold air crossing the Great Lakes over this winter, we're likely going to see some tremendous explosive lake effect snow development. Looking at snow cover here, this is another sign. You can see eastern Canada here. A lot of snow cover. Also, British Columbia out here, parts of southwestern Alberta. And look at how it's building up here in parts of the Yukon, northern Alaska, the Arctic Circle. That's a sign of things to come. You're going to start to see this fill in across much of south central parts of Canada, and that's going to help sustain the cold air outbreaks. Wanted to show you over here towards parts of Asia. Look at northern China here into Russia. Tremendous amounts of snow up here in Siberia. I'll show you the northern hemisphere view pretty quickly here. Even northern parts of Japan are getting buried in snow here. So, heading into mid-November here, mid to late November, this is a sign of things to come here for eastern North America. And here we are on our big view. Obviously, Greenland up there buried in snow as usual. But look at there. Look at Asia, Siberia right over here. It is buried. Tremendous amounts of snow, even northern Europe over here. But you can see that in respect to North America. You start to see a pattern forming here of snowfall here into eastern Canada. That's going to bleed south and eastward here. Now, this is really interesting to look at. I know the National Weather Service, I don't always agree with their winter weather outlooks. However, they do have some good analogs and analysis to deal with here. This is a very weak La Nina. So you calculate all the winters down here from 1959 to 2024. And this is January through March, comparing to 1991 to 2020. So we have comparison here. You can see the northern tier does end up with a bit more snow. Pacific Northwest, Northern Plains, Midwest into the Northeast. Now we also have some areas of below average snow, parts of the central and southern Mid-Atlantic, Appalachians, down here through the central and southern plains, and of course the southwest areas, Four Corners region. Now we get into all La Ninas. Now, I know we're going to be heading towards a La Nada, so that's going to really throw a wrench in this, so to speak. But you see that kind of tones down a little bit. The extremes get more extreme out west here with a lot more snow in the Pacific Northwest, but that's more indicative of a stronger La Nina. That's where you're going to see the skewing going on. And you see back east, it's a little less extreme with more generalized above average snow here across the north, the parts of the Great Lakes. And then look at that. You have the Mid-Atlantic there, which is well below average. This is a very interesting map as well that NOAA put out. How many weak La Nina winters, January through March, were below average snowfall? And you can see that magnifies intensely as we go throughout this, the deep south, southeast, southwest, Four Corners region, parts of the Mid-Atlantic as well. Much less to the north. So you still have that a little greater than above average of having less snowfall. But as we go through all La Nina winters, look at how the extremes, they tone down a bit. So that's where we're going to see, now we're getting into more snow here to the north, and of course, still less snow here to the south. All right, so hopping over to Tropical Tidbits, kind of ironic because we're going into winter here, but they got a really nice product here on the GFS, the upper air 10 millibar height pattern. It's showing essentially our polar vortex over towards parts of northern Asia and into northern Europe. Now you can see as we head through the rest of November here, yeah, the bend in those isobars you can ultimately see is towards eastern North America. That would tend to indicate some cooler, shallow, cool air outbreaks, cold air outbreaks. But as you start to see towards the end of November, that cell is going to start pivoting more towards North America. And before I continue with more weather coverage, if you made it this far in the video and you like it, smash that like button, everyone, please. It really does help. Question or comment down below, especially about this winter. I love to read your questions or comments and respond to them. Also, for all your winter weather coverage, hit that subscribe bell notification button. I will be covering not just the tropics, but also winter storms all winter long. Let's continue with more weather coverage. All right, so let's take a look at the EPS Weeklies here. To start off the winter here, we go at about 1,000 hours, so to speak. And you can see out west here, obviously this is correlating with our big storm systems. And back east, we've seen a little bit of a drying trend here, except northern New England, southeast Canada. Now, as we head towards November 24th here, you start to see the precipitation really overtaken the Mississippi River Valley back eastward here. It looks like most of the lower 48, except northwestern Washington here and northern Maine, getting clipped with drier than average conditions. Now, as we head through December 1st here, so here it is. This is going to line up, especially on the northern side of this, where we get some frozen precipitation. So above average here into parts of the Ohio Valley. This is great news for Ohio, down into Kentucky, western Pennsylvania, areas that have been a little dry as of late. And then look at this towards December 8th here, still pulling a little bit east here, the East Coast. We're still going to start lining up those coastal systems. There's that wintertime thing taking over into Northern California with this drier than average setting in, as I've said before. And then as we stretch through December 15th here, you can see still a little bit above average across the east. We start to get a little below average here in parts of this western and south central Great Lakes here. But the Pacific Northwest turns a little bit wet. And then as we head towards Christmas time, December 22nd, here it is. We're going to start ramping up the precipitation again. Watch eastern New England, though, a little bit below average. There's the Pacific Northwest getting into much drier. Going over temperatures as well, you know, it's been really warm out west, below average here in the east. So look at below 10, below average. In parts of Florida here, 5 to 7 degrees below average here up here into the northeast. Now watch this as we head towards Thanksgiving week. That, as I said before, we're going to get that ridge developing back east here. And then look at that. That spreads to the east throughout December 1st, getting colder out west. Is this going to flip? Yeah, here it is. December 8th, we're flipping below average. That's going to pool to the east as we get a little bit above average here out west. And there it is. We're looking much, not tremendously much colder than average, but there it is. We're seeing those blues, lighter blues, and even some moderate blues. And here we go, taking all the ensemble means here. Snowfall anomalies, of course, across the Rockies. It starts out a little bit interesting here, the Great Lakes, as we stretch throughout mid to late November. Now we get into towards Thanksgiving. You see warmer than average here across the Great Lakes, below average out west. Now watch as we head towards December 8th, it starts to flip. There's that ridge, there's that trough across the east setting up. This is what we're going to see. Look at the snowfall mean here above average from parts of the northern Rockies back east here through the northeast. And then look at this. Rounding out, getting into Christmas week. Yeah, Rockies, plains into the Great Lakes, parts of the New England area. We're looking slightly above average for snowfall mean.
I am proud to announce that I am now an affiliate with Trilogy Maps. TrilogyMaps.com, bringing you the most digital, customizable maps found nowhere else on the internet. These maps are simply stunning. It's an advanced layering system that makes these maps great for making forecast maps with ease or any other maps that you would like to display important information on. The resolution on these maps is simply amazing. From the detail of everything here in the States, and you can also create stunning, digital, professional layered maps from also across the entire world. And don't forget, in checkout, the discount code option, use my code, MeteoMark, hit apply, and you will get 20% off your order. So if you want the most professional, customizable, and affordable weather maps found nowhere else on the internet, look no further than TrilogyMaps.com. Link in the description down below along with your discount code.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me for this edition of MeteoMark's Winter Outlook 2025-2026. Definitely stay tuned for me throughout this winter. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Subscribe, bell notification button so you're alerted with all my winter storm outlooks. I also do the tropics all year round as well, so be sure to check out all my future videos. I will be fine-tuning my winter outlooks throughout the monthly basis here as we go throughout this winter. So please, I would be honored for you to continue to tune in throughout this winter and maybe into next hurricane season as well. So thank you everyone for joining me for this edition of Winter Outlook 2025-2026. Thanks everyone.